We'll go ahead and commence with our Duncanville City Council meeting agenda, Tuesday, February the 19th. This is our working session. The first thing that we'll do is go over the agenda items. So, Mr. Hugman, you want to head out, please?
Mayor and Council, tonight on your consent agenda, item 4A are the minutes for the joint meeting between the DC EDC and the City Council on February 5th, and your regular minutes, the regular minutes from February 5th and the joint meeting in January 28th. Item 4B is a resolution to enter into a joint election agreement with Dallas County. As you know, Dallas County typically administers our elections for us in conjunction with all of the other municipalities in the county. You had in your packet the contract agreement. At the time that we put this together, we did not have the cost yet from Dallas County. We have received that agreement, and those costs are there. Kristen made a copy of that for you along with the resolution with that amount filled in. The amount that they are estimating is $6,569.08, and that is within our budgeted amount. Item 4C is a resolution authorizing a contract for pavement markings with Action Commercial Services of Rockwall, Texas. This was a contract that was bid out. We received 3 bids, and Action Commercial Services was the lowest bid. The proposed contract would be for a 1-year term and then with 4 one-year renewal options. This is for pavement markings for streets. This includes the thermoplastic markings and raised buttons. The amount that is for this contract is estimated. It would be based on unit price for what is actually done, and that is within our budget amount in the traffic operations budget and the streets division budget. Item 4D is a resolution authorizing a purchase of security systems, cabling and cameras from Night Security Systems. You may recall that we have been, over the last couple of years, implementing security cameras in different locations and either replacing cameras or adding cameras where we didn't have them in some of our parks and facilities. So this is the 3rd year of a 5-year plan to bring cameras to all of our facilities and to our parks. This year's would include the City Hall, Police Department, Armstrong Park, Alexander Park, the Field House, and the Main Street Pump Station. This is an amount of $212,380, and that is funded partially through the one-time projects fund, partially through the Water Utilities Capital Improvement Projects Fund, and partially through the Federal Asset Forfeiture Fund, which, if you're not familiar with that, that is those are funds that are the police department receives either through the federal asset forfeiture or the state asset forfeiture, and those funds have to be used for specific purposes. So the camera system that would be applicable to the police department would be funded through those funds.
Excuse me, Jim, you said these are for all parks?
That is our plan. So far we have not gotten all of our parks. But over the 5 years, that is the intent, is to get cameras in all of our parks and all of our facilities, including our pump stations.
Do we know what the next phase, did you already have an outline which one's going to be next?
We do, and then each year we look at it and we kind of move some of them around depending on total cost and depending on other issues that may have come up. And I don't recall, Tracy. Yes, sir. Tracy, do you remember what's planned for the next year? What are the areas that we've gotten over the last 2 years?
So we've done library, we've done Armstrong Park, Rec Center, Field House. Those are the ones for the Field House or extras. Those ones. But we still have several parks to do.
And critical infrastructure is very, very important. Really, cameras are critical. Water towers, pump stations, and stuff.
But we do plan also to install cameras at the service center. We pulled those out of this 5-year plan because we'll include those as part of that bond project.
So for Harrington Park, that gets a lot, people drive on the fields and mess them up, and then there's, I know personally of sexual assaults that have gone on there. I was wondering, when you install the cameras, is that a live feed somewhere, or is that something that you just go pick up if you need it?
We can do that. It would just depend on if there's notice from somebody that there's something going on. Officer would have access.
So it can be like that?
It'll constantly record, and if there's something going on in that area, and somebody calls the police department, then the officer should go on and take a look and see what's going on.
So there's not a person sitting there watching the,
Well, along that line, the water towers and pump stations, that's kind of a different system, isn't it? I mean, it's, you've got other security besides the cameras there.
There will be, with the cameras that we're adding to the water towers, there's perimeter cameras that will set a line, and somebody crosses it and it sends an alert. So that's what it's still cameras, but within the software, you can actually set a perimeter.
Do they tie into the SCADA system?
Yes,
To
sir.
alert the operator that something's going on, there's an intruder?
Yes, sir. So they will.
Those are all of the items on the consent agenda.
can I ask a question about the minutes? The P and Z joint meeting, is that not required to have minutes?
They'll be on the
They will
next
be
one.
Okay.
And the same with the park board. On the items for individual consideration, item 5A is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances for the residential homestead exemption. This is brought at the council's direction for a 3% homestead exemption and would be an assessed value no less than $5,000.
I think that we need to make sure everybody understands how the math works on that. You don't get $5,000, you get it.
No, that's correct. It's $5,000 minimum off of your appraised value, if not, or 3%, whichever is the greater. So when we looked at the 3% and the data that we gave you before, that break point was around $160,000, I think, valued home. So anything below that value, and it wasn't exact, it was a little bit, it was, I don't remember the exact number, it was around 160,000. Anything below that value would receive a $5,000 minimum. Anything above that breakpoint value would receive the 3%.
So that
Now,
means the 5,000 is subtracted off the 160. And then
Correct.
it is multiplied times the 7 point,
That's correct.
That's 0.78.
or
0.7.
divided by, sorry.
Yeah.
And so that's where you get an average of $38 is what you would get. Well, it just is real confusing to some people. It sounds like they're going to get 5,000 and you're not.
No, it's not. And so we calculated the assumed revenue reduction, and that was, and we also estimated using the same number of residential parcels that we believe are rentals based on our rental registration program of 2,200. We backed that number out, and that is why we gave you an estimate of a reduction in revenues of $230,000
Which is a whole
based
lot
on
less.
previous year. I think we were estimating around 300,000.
That day.
And that is an annual amount and will grow as values grow. In addition, we also gave you information based on the current state legislature action at the 2.5% property tax cap. At the time we had the workshop, that was not on the table. And since that time was when they filed the resolution, Senate resolution and the House resolutions. So those were joint legislative actions that were taken.
Mhm. But that's been going on for years.
Not at 2.5%.
But them trying to get it, get something passed has been, and it's not passed. So that's kind of like, it's might gonna.
I was gonna wait to make some comments about this, but since it's been brought up now, I'll make my comments. I was gonna let Mr. Ogden finish the agenda, but I'll make my comments now. In 2 previous council meetings, I have made some precautionary comments to the council and for the understanding of our citizens in terms of what is going on in Austin. And while this has been going on for 8 years, correct in that, I did some research and found out it's accurate. This has been in discussion and it's been bounced back and forth for 8 years and nothing's been happening. But something has happened that is extraordinary with this particular session. And that is the filing of 2 identical bills in the House and the Senate. What's even more extraordinary in the history of the legislature, in terms of what's going on now, they have chosen, as I mentioned in my remarks at the last council meeting, the 2.5% revenue cap is being proposed at the worst possible level. It could have been proposed at what was been bandied about for the last 8 years at an 8% rate, which left room for negotiation. Let's start way up here and let's see where the legislature wants to go. Do we want to go at 8? Do we want to go at 7? Do we want to go at 6? Where do we want to go? The internal political machinations in Austin have taken this thing a totally different route, and they've gone worst case possible for us, worst case possible for the cities, and that's at 2.5%. Which leaves room for what? It leaves room for negotiation to go from 2.5 where? Maybe to 3, maybe to 4, maybe to 4.5, but no one knows. As I mentioned earlier, I did
the
talk.
other way too.
Pardon me?
It could go the other way too.
It could go. It could
And
get
plus
worse.
home appraisals keep
It
going
could-
up,
it
so
could
you're
get
leaving
worse.
that whole thing out.
So I will reiterate that I did get advice and counsel from 2 individuals I respect. and that's
Okay,
Senator
okay,
Royce
now
West.
that's where I want you to stop, because
No.
I talked to him too, and she said that's not what the conversation was.
The precautionary statements were it would be best if we were prudent in waiting until we find out what the legislation
That's
is
not what
going
she
to say.
said.
That's why I wanted to talk to you.
If you
'Cause
want to refute it, it's fine.
I will refute it if you're gonna stick with it, because she said that's not what she said.
Well, then you and I and Representative Davis will meet together and find out exactly
I
what
don't
she
have to
said.
meet with you and Representative Davis.
Well,
I
I am
will
quoting-
if she wants to.
I am, that's fine, I'll be happy to.
She did share that same thing that she shared with me.
I'll be happy to.
I did talk with her.
Advice and counsel from our legislatures is that we be a little prudent and wait and see what the legislature is going to do. Since that time, 4 weeks has passed. 4 weeks has passed. We now have action coming out of our state legislature. And I want to read to you the capsulization of what occurred at the hearings. This is coming from the Texas Municipal League, whose sole purpose in life is to protect the cities of the state of Texas. The governor presented his biennial State of the State address this week. Unsurprisingly, he declared property tax reform as an emergency item, which means it will be a priority early in the season. To that end, the Senate Committee on Property Tax held its hearing on SB 2, the property tax reform bill containing a 2.5% revenue cap on Wednesday. By their treatment of local government witnesses, the chair and most members of the committee clearly saw the passage of the bill as a foregone conclusion. In fact, the chair stated more than once he wouldn't listen to suggestions from those who were opposed to the bill. He encouraged witnesses to change their testimony to neutral by stating that he would listen to their suggestions if they did. Overall, some on the committee appeared to see city officials as a nuisance and treated them with disrespect and disdain. The bill was left pending in committee at the conclusion of the hearing. Thanks to the dozens of city officials who testified convincingly about the effects of the 2.5% cap on public safety and other critical city services. Another report talking about what went on in the hearings. At first, the hearing on aggressive property tax reforms on Wednesday, it was clear the state senators intended to bulldoze over objections to legislation limiting future increases in taxes collected by local governments. Supporters of the measure were greeted warmly. Critics were frequently interrupted and accused of providing false information to a new committee made up of almost entirely Republicans.
I'm never going to, quote, "I'm never going to stop on this until we get this bill passed," said State Senator Paul Betancourt, a Houston Republican who chairs the Property Tax Committee and also serves as the Republican caucus leader in the Senate. Most of the early testimony handpicked by the committee was from groups supporting the caps, or at least the concept. Most of the people were given 7 minutes to make their case and were rarely interrupted. But when officials from San Antonio and Dallas were finally allowed to speak later, they were given 2 minutes to state their opposition, and the mood was often combative. My comments to us as a council. I implore us as a council, first of all, I'll state that we as a council agree that a general tax exemption is something we should do. We have done that. We stated it in the workshop. We stated it here in City Council. That's why we have an ordinance before us tonight. We all agree it's the best thing to do for our citizens and our city. However, since that, these recent events occurring in Austin present to me a red flag that we need to be prudent and temperate in our pursuit of this particular ordinance. And I implore the council to think about this very seriously. And I request that you give consideration to tabling this ordinance until Austin acts. Now, there are 3 dates that come into play in terms of making this effective for our citizens this particular tax year. We don't have to do it by the 1st of March to make it effective for our citizens. We have until July to do that. By that time, we will know what's going on in the state legislature and where the cap has been imposed. In this particular time, I don't believe that it's going to be fluffed around and not done anything about again. Yes, it's my personal opinion. Whether I can convince you or any others of that is not my position to do so. All I'm doing is letting you know that I feel, based on the information coming out of Austin and from the reports coming out of what's going on in those hearings, our best prudent action for the betterment of our city and our citizens is that we delay any action on this particular ordinance until we know exactly what's happening in Austin with the 2.5%. And I ask you to consider that and think about it, and if possible, that we have some agreement, that we table this until we know what's going on. And to do that means we would have some agreement here. If we, in knowing what the consensus is around the table, even to table it, we would still have to take it into council. It would still have to be a public vote on tabling it in that respect. And I implore you, based on the information that we have,
Okay,
that you
based on
give
the
this serious consideration.
Okay, based on the information we have, $230,994. We spend all the time here. We spend all the time. If that passes or it doesn't pass, it's the same. If it passes, it's the same. If it doesn't pass, it's the same. So you're saying if it passes, you're not going to give citizens back $230,000.994. That's what you're saying. But we spend, let's see, we spent $500,000 on replacing cars that were 2 years old. It's over and over that we spend this kind of money. That's peanuts. How much is our annual budget?
For the general fund, so I believe about 32 million.
Okay, what about total?
And all funds combined, about 65 million.
65 million. Well, I was looking at like 40 million. That would be 0.5%. I mean, that's a ridiculously low, and it's not our money. It's the taxpayers' money that you're giving back to them. 230,000. It's not like it's ours. It's not ours. It's time to give something back, and 3% is nothing. It equaled $38 per household. Oh, no, that was at 300,000. And that was where there was a difference in the conversation.
There's present day impact and there's future impact that we need to consider.
But you're also leaving out that the appraisals will continue to go up.
Exactly. And more
And
the
when they go
appraisals
up, the
continue to go
percentage
up,
goes
the
up.
more the percentage is gonna
That,
rise.
and more taxes we bring in. I think you should have something of good faith at some time.
So I take it you are not in favor of delaying of this?
No, I'm not. I think that at some point that we should give back to citizens something. $38 is nothing.
I understand.
I think we still take this to the floor, as you mentioned.
I'm sorry, Mark.
I think we still take it out to the floor, as you
Well, we
mentioned.
have to. We don't have a choice.
We can't make the decision.
We're just
Then
talking
I'll
about
share
it.
my opinion.
I'll vote for a homestead, but delaying it, you know, it's not a delay in the effect of it, it's the delay in us approving it. So I'm fungible on that, but I'm for the homestead. But as far
Except
as-
for what's the point of delaying it?
For my fellow council members to have some confidence in it, and for people they represent to have some confidence in it. Get through this legislative session, and they can vote for it without anything unforeseen that they may be coming down the road.
We can still do it by July, we can still do it in effect, and we will just know exactly what's facing us with the percentage in terms of
We can
revenue.
do-
That's
yeah.
all I'm asking.
We can do it before July.
We're all in favor of the general exemption. All I'm saying is that we will know what the revenue cap is by the time the July deadline comes around. That's all I'm saying.
So you might not vote for it. I mean, that's the only thing that could change.
No, no. What I'm saying is that we've all agreed that we want to do it. It's just that if this revenue cap goes into effect, the data that's going to be put together by Richard and his staff in terms of the effect on both the citizens' budget, the city's budget, and the effect on individual citizens, we will know for sure. Right now, we're speculating. If we wait until the July deadline, there's no speculation. We will be able to calculate, no estimation.
The
We'll
only
know
thing you're
exactly the
speculating
effect.
is on whether the cap will pass. That's it. All the other figures are based on what's there right now. That's the only speculation.
From my business perspective and looking at something like this in terms of the environment, I just think it's more prudent for us to wait to see what the legislation is going to do before we pass this and then have to take some different action later if something goes, I mean,
You can't vote on it
if
in
they cap it
July.
at a much different rate, if it goes down, we could be in serious trouble.
It's at the top of it, of the agenda. It will be decided by probably May or April, probably April.
Well, he's saying July.
No,
No, that's the-
I'm
that's
saying
drop
we
dead
have
date.
until July. The way this is
But the
looking,
legislators don't meet in July.
Oh,
it will be
I know
over
what they
by
do,
then.
and they also sometimes extend sessions.
Yeah, they
Go
want to
on
extend
and
it
on and
on, this
on.
is already at the top.
This is
They're
the
gonna
top
take care of
priority
this.
of the governor. And, you know, the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House
I
have all
understand, I
vigorously
understand.
come out in favor of this thing. It's gonna go where we don't know
Understand.
exactly where. But what I'm saying is, yes, I want to do the general tax exemption. I'm just saying if we wait until the legislature decides what it's going to do in terms of the dollar or the percentage.
So
We will know for sure.
you're in favor of it, but you want to wait, so we'll see if we're going to change this 3%.
No. I'm saying that we will know exactly what's going to be happening in
Okay.
terms of what our future of the city.
Okay, so
could be.
once we know that it's passed, will we change the 3%?
I don't believe we would, because we've agreed.
So then
in
what are we
principle.
delaying for?
So that's my question.
If we're not going to change it, because, and
you don't
here,
know.
and here's why I'm in favor of it, it's because of the dates that we have here. People have been complaining and wanting this for a long time.
Years.
And
Since I first got on the council.
the
I've
March
been-
11 date is what is in my fore, because we can let the citizens know that this is something as a council. We heard them, and they'll see it reflected on their statement that they're gonna get from the appraisal district. So that's why, because if the 3% is not gonna change, and he just said that, if the 3% is not gonna change, let's let the people know that we've heard them. We really have been listening to them and wanting this homestead exemption. And it'll be on their March 11th statement.
But there's a future impact. There's a
Okay.
future impact. We don't know if,
We don't know what
who
we don't
knows,
know.
if the state
Yes,
legislature.
we don't know exactly, Leslie.
The
We don't
state
know what we don't know.
legislature could come down and pass something that overrides what we do. They've done it before. Cities have passed ordinances that the state legislature is unhappy with, and they toss it out and say, no, you ain't gonna do that anymore.
What are you talking about?
I'm saying that the best prudent action for us to do.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, what were you just referring to? What do you think that they could pass that would throw this out? That you couldn't give a homestead exemption?
They could limit it to something even worse than 2.5.
And they can't, they
And
couldn't do that.
and they can impose that on cities at their will, and we wouldn't be able to fight it.
Oh my gosh.
All I'm asking is that.
The
we
sky is
just-
falling. That's
But
ridiculous.
All
I
right.
think a lot of council member, or they want to have this discussion out on the floor, so they're holding their comments. So I don't think we're going to get anywhere during the
Yeah.
session.
Well, that's fine. As I said, it was not my intent to catch any of you council members cold out there. I don't operate like that.
Yeah, I appreciate
I
it.
felt, I needed to let you know how I felt in here and to see what happens out there. Now, if the council generally feels that if there is a motion to pass this as it stands tonight, unfortunately, I will have to vote against it because I don't feel it's the wisest and most prudent move on behalf of our council for the best interests of our city at this point in time. And unfortunately, however that gets communicated to our citizens, well, the mayor's against the general exemption. No, he's not. Generally, the mayor is against doing it today versus waiting until something happens. And I'm not concerned about my own personal future, not whatsoever. I just really feel that it's my obligation, it's incumbent upon me as the mayor to express my feelings about this and implore you to just think about the future, not just tomorrow, or 2019 tax assessments, that what it could do to our city's budget in the future.
So now you're saying you're not for it. You
I'm
just said
saying-
2019.
I support.
I've said
what the
enough.
mayor's saying.
I've said enough. I don't need to reiterate, and this is the way it's gonna go. If somebody comes out there and makes a motion to approve this as it stands, I will vote against it because of my concern that I have voiced to you. I'm on record, I'm on air, I'm on camera. Anybody wants to concern themselves about what I'm actually saying, they can view this video and you will know what I feel. My feeling is for the future of our city, it's best to hold this until we have exact information from the legislature, and we can do that in 31 July, and we can still make it available to our citizens instead of doing something today. That's it. Some housekeeping. Based on, we previously told you about commending our football team with footballs, with our signatures. The footballs are here. Okay, so all 7 of us need to sign these footballs. And depending on how executive session goes, we can do it after executive session before we go into council. If we don't have time for that, then I ask all of us to stay after we adjourn tonight and sign these 7 footballs for Coach Samples and the team. Okay? One other piece of housekeeping. The police report, the staff and board report, the police department 2018 racial profiling report, there is a deadline that has to be done before council before the 1st of March. So regardless of time, how things go, that's got to be done tonight. So we get that done legally. Okay. So with that, I guess we can go to, what do we have, Kevin?
Brief on the bond program.
Bond program president.
Hey, Mayor, members of council, just want to give you a quick briefing on our capital project implementation schedule for the 2018 capital bond program. Just really a quick timeline recap. As you recall, it's just been over a year that council created the Duncanville Citizens Bond Advisory Committee. They made the recommendation to the City Council in July of 2018. Council then adopted an ordinance number 2342 to conduct a bond election to be held on November 6th. And voters approved all 4 bond propositions, with council taking action on the authorization of the issuance of bonds. With bonds becoming available, the funds becoming available March 7th. So we'll go through each of the projects within the propositions individually. As you're aware, we've had several town hall meetings to discuss Kidsville, so we are moving forward with conceptual design, which will go to Park Board, then to council. And let me preface this by saying you will be seeing a lot of these projects coming forward as we start moving forward with the bond projects. You'll start seeing contracts for design work and conceptual information as well. So you'll be seeing these projects coming forward to the council. After the approval by City Council of the design, we will then engage a firm to do the design. I want to also include in this that we will, after the design is finished or complete and accepted by the City Council, we will ask Council to authorize us to go seek a Parks and Wildlife grant. Those are we're looking at fall, usually October date for those to be submitted, with the answer usually around February. So we're looking at February 2020 for that. And if we are successful with that match, we can then start construction moving forward in spring of 2020, with completion estimated around the winter of 2021. Rotary Park, we're in the middle of, we would also then do design. We'd like to try to do that in-house if we can, along with utilizing our streets crew for construction. That should be a simple project that we can get started on this spring and complete by the end of the summer. Harrington Park, as you may recall, we had a number of projects that were associated with Harrington Park. We're going to bundle those up so that we can get economies of scale. Again, looking at design schedule for the winter of 2019, completion in fall of 2019, where we can then move forward with construction starting in the winter of 2020, completion in winter 2021. The pavilion replacement, we're looking at vendor selection as we speak, and we'll be presenting to the council some conceptual designs. These are prefabricated. However, they're also very well done when it talks to architectural treatments, stone work, and that kind of thing. So they'll be well done. And then construction schedule again starting in the spring of 2019, that we can get that completed by the fall. Trails, Parks Board will be considering in their next future meetings and making recommendations for locations that will then bring back to council for their approval and review. And then we'll look at construction phases. One option would be to do all the trails in 1 year, or try to space those out within 3 years. So those are options that we can present and look at. Here's again, a schedule to kind of give you some information. Again, project preparation can be, again, design or vendor selection, and then preparing packages, RFQs for design firms. Yes, ma'am.
Your citywide trails, that's off public streets, so are you going to be considering the bike lanes as far under the trails, or you're not going to do bike lanes?
I think that can be an option. I don't want to speak for the Parks Board as they examine that.
So they will be considering bike lanes?
I don't know if that's, is that going to be right, Mark?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the indication we got.
Okay. Looking at both of them? Okay.
Because I was driving down Daniel on the Dallas side, and they just finished, and they have bike lanes now. And it just kind of dead ends into Duncanville, which has no bike lanes.
Okay.
So it'd be nice if we can connect to those.
Just a little paint.
Hopefully we can get some more.
Proposition B, your street improvement projects, North Main between Camp Wisdom and I-20. Again, design will begin in the summer of 2020. We are working with Dallas County, and we have working on the pre-engineering matching now, and then during the design, during design, we'll be working with them on call projects as this project moves forward. We will start going to Daniel-Dale. Speaking of Daniel-Dale, design schedule starting in the spring in 2019. You'll see construction. That'll be the first project you'll see construction beginning for with Duncanville, starting in the winter of 2020 and completing through winter of 2021. Cedar Ridge Drive will be the last project, as you can see, that we will begin design scheduling or design work in spring 2021, with construction starting winter of 2022. Of course, these dates sound like they're far out. They're really they're on us right now, so we're trying to keep up an aggressive schedule on all our projects as we move forward. And again, just kind of give you a visual idea of design and construction implementation. And then Proposition C, which was the new fire station, we are in the process of trying to identify certain sites, and then we'll come to council when it pertains to beginning negotiation and site acquisition and brief you. We hope to begin and get to you, or to get this to the council in the summer of 2019. Hopefully, sooner if we can. We're trying to work diligently. That's the first step. We need to identify a site before we then begin and move forward with the construction. So what we would like to try to do on this particular project is use a construction manager risk. We are allowed per the government code to use a construction manager risk and then also ultimately get to guaranteed maximum price. So what's unique about a construction manager risk project is that when we hire construction manager risk, as opposed to going out and doing a design bid build, and where you then award it to a GC and then they would go bring in their own subs. In this type of unique service delivery, project delivery approach, the construction manager is actually working for us. They're not their own GC. So what we would normally be paying the GC, we're paying the project or construction manager. Then what will be unique about this then is to contain the cost. They would then go out and go bid out the subs. So a lot of times those GCs will already have their subs out there and they know their pricing. In this approach, it then forces competitive bidding on each of those blocks that we would need: utility work, foundation building, and then inside FF&Es and those kind of furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we would like to try to use this approach. What would then happen is, if we select construction manager risk, we then go off and have proposals for architects. So that construction manager risk would be part of that. Then as we go through the programming and design, we are constantly looking at costs so we can contain cost. And ultimately, once we have had those sub bids that come in, we would then award those out and require what we would call basically guaranteed maximum price. So that would be the ceiling that they have to deliver the projects. And design bid build, many times there may be conflict between the architect and the GC. Well, this is not what we're meant to do, and you will see price
Change orders.
Change orders. Thank you. Don't lose it. You'll see change orders. So this is a way of trying to prevent that. Basically, you're telling us this is the price. You're going to deliver it to us for this price, and you're not giving us, and you're not throwing change orders at us. And that's also to keep this project on time. This is one of our longer lasting projects, as you can see, beginning the design in fall 2019, and then beginning the construction in spring of 2021, lasting through the winter of 2023, hopefully sooner than that. And obviously the fire department will be very involved, especially in the programming part. And then the Municipal Service Center, we hope to begin the design schedule in spring 2019. We've asked Hewlett Zollers, they are the firm that provided the facilities study, since they're very familiar with the facility to begin with, to help us again in the design for the space. Again, that would include programming, especially with staff available at the service center, so we can see what kind of improvements that we can make in the space design, and then see how we can add to the service center. One of the things that will make this project complicated, especially when we start construction, is the fact that we're still going to be working out of this site. So what we'll have to do is work through moving certain staff in certain areas as that construction is occurring, and then being very sensitive to operations along the way. It'll make this a very complex redo, but so that we'll be able to manage. Again, here's just going to give you the timeline. Fire station clearly the longest driver as far as going out. One of the, real quick, I also want to make mention too. We will also be designing a website that will just be specific for the capital bond projects, so that the citizenry can go in there and look and see what the status is. So the idea is to break the projects out on what we want to call the capital bond web tracker, where they can go in there and see the status, have pictures, timelines, and so forth, so that we can keep that constantly updated as we're making progress, whether it's in the design phase or making progress in the construction phase of each of these projects. And again, 2023 is really the outlier year for us to get all these complete. This is an aggressive schedule. Obviously, be working with Public Works, Parks, and Fire Department, and trying to keep these on time. And with that, is there any questions?
Oh, I have a question. I do have comments. And my comments going along with, I know we want, at the end of the day, the $21.6 million that we're investing to the bond program, we want the best for our city, the outcome to be the best. Whether it's the fire station, we want the top of the line. Whether it's building parks, we want the top of the line. Our entire city voted on this bond project, and so I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, I would like for us to put a stronger effort on making sure that the $21.6 million reflect our entire city when they talk about the diversity in the project itself. We have a third across the board of our race, and I'm not saying a percentage, but I'm saying surely with the $21.6 million, our veterans should be, we should be able to track that our veterans have parts of this project, our women-owned business have part of the project, our African-American or Hispanic should have part of this project. We should be able to track that to see some leverage that our entire city is a participation of dollars. Now, I'm not just talking about a percent, I'm talking about dollars. So when you look at the dollars and the percentage, we should be able to kind of compare this along the way as well. So if you ask me what I'm talking about, let me just be very frank. Very frank is, I want to make sure that who we give business to looks like our city overall, and it's not one-sided. So
you're not saying Duncanville businesses, you say just to have it
Oh.
reflect the diversity in Duncanville.
diversity in Duncanville, that's correct. So when you look at that, when I see projects like this, because that's what the constituents that I hear already saying, how's that going to work with your overall city? And so I don't want to leave that off the table. I want to make sure I share that. Are we still asking those questions, whether we want it or not? Are we asking those questions to make sure that it is reflected overall?
The sharing of those dollars you're referring to are the bids that we put out for the work to be done.
Well, I want the one.
That's what I want to make sure is what you're saying.
I'm saying to you, the work.
Because if there are no MWBE general contractors that we allow for
well, let me just tell you
in
that.
Duncanville, then those MWBE enterprises are not there.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not just saying Duncanville. I'm saying overall, for number two, that's been an excuse for too long that there's no business out there. You have a business that could do any parts of this, period, whether it's subcontract, whether it's contract. So I won't fall for telling me that we couldn't find anyone that'll bid for these opportunities, because there are companies out there, whether it's veterans, whether it's women-owned business, whether it's minority business, period, that we can aggressively make sure that they bid. If they don't, find out how.
Well,
It happens in other cities.
MWBE businesses need to file to get the certification so that they show up on the bid list when our procurement officer goes and does that work. Because it's not the procurement officer's job to go through and look at all the individuals that do the work and call them and say, are you MWBE certified? So it's incumbent on those businesses to get that certification, especially when they want to do business with the municipality.
And it's incumbent on us to go out and search. It's incumbent on us to advertise in the right place to get
that. We can do. That we can put it out on our website that we are doing construction work and particular things, and MWBE businesses that want to do business with our municipality, if they're not MWBE certified, can certainly take the steps to do so that our procurement officer has the ability to actually do work with them. Because in my other life, I worked with MWBE businesses to get them certified so they can receive municipal contracts. So that if there's, some of the work is incumbent upon them, and some of the work is incumbent on, and I agree, we need to advertise that we're looking for these individuals, and if they need help to sign up to get MWB certification, we can certainly have them do that.
We hear what you're saying. We
Okay.
had these conversations. I know Brea's sitting back there, and I'm sure she's taking notes, but she and I have talked before, and we were looking at ways to help businesses register, but the mayor is correct. They have to register with the state as an MWBE. And then we have to follow the state bidding requirements, and those are legal requirements. But we can do what we can to try to encourage people, help them with the forms, show them where the forms are, make sure they understand the process, and we are going to work at doing that, trying to get that information out to more businesses,
Well, that's-
regardless of just this, but all businesses.
And that's information I want to hear more of, to be honest. I'm not just going to take it that we're doing it. I think we need to see more of that.
Well, and I think with the CM at risk, I think it would presented that option now, as opposed to having a GC that comes out there and has their own select. We're going to have multiple bid packages for different, layers. So we're providing those opportunities. I think that is one delivery method of being able to do just that.
Yeah, I mean, we use one right now with Criado and Associates. It's female owned, and she's also Hispanic. Same, it's part of the,
And the firm that did our state of the city address, minority business owned right here in the city of Duncanville.
Yeah, that I brought to the table.
Okay, with that, we'll go into executive session. Can we conclude executive session by 7? Mr. City Attorney?
My item's very short, Mayor, it's just informational, but.
Okay, so, what?
We have 2 items.
Right.
No.
The other one might take.
Either way, I'm fine, I'll be here. Mine will not take very long, so if, I'm willing to go do mine, if we then come back to do the other.
We'll take a shot, see if we can get through.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attendance. We're calling to order the City of Duncanville City Council at 7:04 on February the 19th, 2018. First thing on our agenda is the invocation, and the invocation is by Bishop Brian Bowman of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Allegedly. You are here? Come. Please stand.
Our dear, kind, and loving Heavenly Father, we humbly bow our heads before Thee this night to thank Thee for the many blessings that we've been given, for the opportunity of living in this great land, and for the freedoms that we're able to enjoy. We ask a special blessing upon our police and fire and others that serve and protect this community, and ask and pray that Thou mayest protect and watch over them, that they may be able to return home safely to their families. We ask a special blessing upon this council, that they may be able to receive the guidance and direction to do Thy will. We ask that those here in attendance, that they may be kind and obedient, and be able to respect the views that are presented here this night. We ask a special blessing upon those that live here within Duncanville, that they may be loving and kind and love their neighbors as themselves. And we humbly ask and pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledges to our flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Please be seated.
Thank you, April. Tonight, I'd like to honor one of our city employees who's worked with the city of Duncanville for 36.4 years. It's my honor to introduce you to, and many of y'all are probably well aware of, Mike Truesdale. He's a battalion chief in our department, and most of all, he's our fire marshal. He's been our fire marshal since June of 2010, so he's got a lot of years' experience throughout the city of Duncanville, going out and doing his fire prevention duties that he did for those years of being in fire prevention. He's responsible for a lot of things that have occurred in Duncanville, a lot of important things. He was responsible for enforcing the fire code throughout our commercial buildings. He went out and inspected our commercial buildings, inspected our schools, and he's done a very good job because if you've noticed, we don't have very many fires in our commercial buildings or in our schools. So Mike has done an excellent job with his assistant, Pam McAllister, in their fire prevention division, and it's been well rewarded in the city of Duncanville. So we're losing a lot of experience with Mike. He's done a good job, and he's going to be hard to replace. So Mike, we want to thank you for all your years of service, 36.4 years of service to the city of Duncanville. And Mike, I'd like to present you a plaque. His actual retirement from the fire department is going to be on February 28th, but we wanted to present him with a plaque tonight. And the plaque says, Fire Marshal Battalion Chief Mike Truesdale. His start date was October 1st, 1982, and his end date will be February 28th, 2019. And it says, in honor of your retirement from the fire service and law enforcement, in sincere appreciation of over 36 years of dedicated service to the Duncanville Fire Department and the Fire Prevention Division.
Thanks again, Chief. I have some family with me. This is my wife, Valerie. I have my mother and dad, Jack and Virginia Truesdale, my daughter, Amanda, and her husband, Manny, my sister, Amy, and her daughter, Rachel, and Mayor, Council, Mr. City Manager, thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve Duncanville for so many years. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we're moving into item number 2, proclamations and presentations. We have 2 tonight. One is going to be to the Tenhagen excavation and for Duncanville Reeds, and I will do both of those. So start that. Good evening. Come on over here. These are well-known folks to me, well-known folks to our city, well-known folks to our Economic Development Corporation Board as well. The Tenhagens have brought into our city the Tenhagen Excavation Company. And in recognition of what they've done, if you ever get, well, it's kind of hard to find your place. It's in the industrial area west of Alexander, back in that area there. But they have put in $1 million building and for their new offices and increased space for all their heavy equipment, heavy machinery. So we are very pleased to have them a part of our industrial complex here in the city of Duncanville. And you want to hold that? We have a proclamation recognizing them. Whereas the city of Duncanville is committed to improving the physical quality and community life, and whereas the Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board was established to promote the commitment, and whereas the mission of Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board is to empower Duncanville citizens and businesses to take responsibility for enhancing their community environment, and whereas each quarter the Keep Duncanville Beautiful Board recognizes one commercial property within the city for significant improvements to the exterior portion of the property, landscape improvements, and/or long-term maintenance of the property that exemplifies high-quality standards. And whereas the Tenhagen Excavating located at 1211 South Alexander has been selected as the Business Beautification Award for February 2019. Now therefore, I, Barry L. Gordon, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby urge all citizens to join me in congratulating Tenhagen Excavating, located at 1211 South Alexander Avenue, and commending this business for contributing to the beautification of our city. Thank you very much. Thank you for all that you do. And we have a plaque for you as well. And Timothy, want to be here with us? Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next proclamation recognizes the importance of reading. I had the opportunity just today to be at the Central Elementary School and to participate in the little ceremony that they were doing in terms of accolades of character attributes. But on the walls of the auditorium at Central Elementary School, there is a great section that's devoted to reading and what it means to read. And reading that and looking at it said, if a student spends 20 minutes a day reading, there's a 90% opportunity for that individual to succeed in going to college and having a high quality education and being a success in life. Reading only 20 minutes a day, starting out in elementary school. Anything less than 20 minutes a day, it begins to decrement that success probability. It was very impactful to me because I know as a kid growing up, I didn't start reading because I didn't go to kindergarten. My parents didn't put me, I started reading when I was before the first grade, only because they made me. But now we're teaching kids in pre-K to read. It's that much importance. And tonight, we're going to recognize the Duncanville Reads program. And here we have, if you all want to come up, these are the librarians in the city of Duncanville. Yeah, let me get in the middle. I need to swing around here. Let me get in the middle of y'all. So, who's the head librarian? Okay, you come over here. Right here. So I'll make this presentation to you representing all the librarians of our great city of Duncanville. I got to read the big print.
Yes, sir.
Okay. We, as citizens of Duncanville, Texas, understand that reading and writing are the cornerstones of education and are required for the economic enhancement of our citizens. We also believe that literacy allows each of us to better understand our city, state, country, and our world. Through reading, we can travel the universe, understand the future, and build on the past. And whereas the city of Duncanville supports the Duncanville Independent School District's efforts to improve educational opportunities for our children, we also support the school district's partnership with the citizens of Duncanville to promote reading and writing. And whereas Duncanville Reads is a partnership between the Duncanville Independent School District and our citizens designed to promote enthusiasm for reading and writing in our students by bringing authors and illustrators to our schools for our students and teachers to question, challenge, and learn from. I'm going to digress from this for a minute because I was also at another ceremony this morning at Hastings. And they have a video board keeps going. And on February, 27th and 28th, there are 4 authors coming to our city, and they're going to be speaking and signing books for our students
at our elementary schools, as I understand it. So that's superb. It's wonderful to have those authors come. Right, so getting back. Okay. So now, therefore, I, Barry L. Gordon, Mayor of the City of Duncanville, Texas, do hereby proclaim February 27th and 28th, 2019 as Duncanville Reads Day in the City of Duncanville and support their efforts to enhance literacy in our students. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for this. I think as librarians, our main goal is to encourage students to read and to make them lifelong learners. So hopefully through Duncanville Reads, we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulate all our librarians, highly deserving of our praise, and we commend you for all that you do in teaching our children to read. It's just enormous to their futures. Thank you. Did you already get a picture? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Number 4 on the agenda, the consent agenda. City Secretary.
Item 4A, consider the minutes for the January 28, 2019 joint meeting with DCEDC and the February 5th, 2019 City Council regular meeting. Item 4B, consider a resolution to enter into a joint agreement and election services contract between Dallas County and other jurisdictions holding election on May 4, 2019 to be administered by the Dallas County Elections Administrator in accordance with Subchapter D of Chapter 31 and Chapter 271 of the Texas Election Code. Item 4C, consider a resolution authorizing the award of a term contract for IFB number 19-014 pavement marking supply and installation services for the unit prices bid to Action Commercial Services LLC of Rockwall, Texas, in the unit amounts bid attached hereto and incorporated herein as Exhibit A for an estimated amount of $101,944.75. Item 4D, consider a resolution authorizing the purchase of security system, cabling, IP cameras, and related equipment from Night Security Systems, LLC, through the Texas Department of Information Resources contract number DIR-TSO-3430 in the amount of $212,380.48.
Thank you,
Move
Chair.
to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Please vote. Okay.
Oh, no, where'd that red light come from?
Okay. The city attorney voted. Keep your finger off the button, Mr. City Attorney. Okay. Thank you. Motion is passed. Thank you. Moving on to items 5 on our agenda, items for individual consideration. Item 5A. Consider an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 18, Taxation, Article 1, in general by adding a new section 18-4 entitled Residence Homestead Exemption from ad valorem taxation in the minimum amount of 3% of assessed value in an amount no less than $5,000 for individuals who are owners of residences and by reserving for future use sections 18-5 through 18-10. Mr. Summerlin.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So, wanted to go over the pertinent numbers for this homestead exemption. Again, the calculation that we've made for the budget impact for a 3% homestead exemption with a $5,000 minimum exemption, and that is off the taxable value of a residence. We've assumed, based on information that we have, that there's about 2,200 residential parcels that are rental properties that will not qualify for this exemption. And so when we back those out, the loss of revenue on an annual basis in the first year would be calculated at $230,994. Of course, if property prices go up, property values go up, that number goes up. Property values go down, that number goes down. The property tax cap at 2.5%, I did the calculation, that would lower the tax rate by 10.3 cents, and that would be across the board for all residential, commercial, business, personal property. The loss of revenue annually would be $1,540,343. So those two things totaled together would be a revenue reduction of $1,771,337. And if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Before we move further, I want to take the opportunity to express my concerns, which I expressed in our briefing session as well. In two prior city council sessions that we had and in working sessions, I expressed my concern over moving forward with this particular action at this point in time based on the unknown of what's going on in our city, or I'm sorry, in our state legislature. At the time that we proposed this, and even during our working session in our retreat back in October of 2018, the entire city council was in favor of the general exemption. We still are. I am personally in favor of it. When we made this determination to move forward with our 3%, we knew that there was some discussion in the state legislature about whether it would be 2, whether it would be 4, whether it would be 8. And there was also an understanding, going back in history, that this particular item has been bandied about in the state legislature for going on 8 years. And for 8 years, it's come before the state legislature and nothing's been done. But the tide has turned. There have been 2 identical bills introduced in our state legislature within the last 2 weeks. That's the first time in the history of the state of Texas, from what the research is indicating, that both the Senate and the House of Representatives have put forward 2 identical bills. Those 2 identical bills cap the tax rate at 2.5%. The governor, the lieutenant governor, and the newly appointed Speaker of the House are vigorously pushing to have this done. There is evidence in the hearings that the proponents of this particular measure are being treated with great respect. When they come before hearings, those who oppose it are being treated with disrespect by the council or by the committee that is reviewing this. My individual particular concern is that we don't know exactly what this revenue cap is going to mean for our city. While granted, the numbers that Mr. Summerlin has shown, that the initial impact is $230,000, and as was stated earlier, is a mere fraction of our overall budget. What we don't know is how this thing is going to flesh out. Now, we have before us 3 different deadlines that the City Council has to actually implement this, to show on our citizens' property tax valuations for 2019. The deadline for that is in July. We can still take action. My concern is that we simply delay taking action until we know what the state legislature is going to be doing. It's my personal feeling. I don't know whether that's shared by the entire council, but this is an open time for discussion, and I wanted to state that. And I implore the council just to consider that, not that we're going to do away with it, but that we know exactly where the state legislature is going with this revenue cap so that we can predict the future budgetary concerns in terms of services to our city. And with that, those are my remarks. Appreciate your listening.
Mr. McBurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in agreement with you, and I'd like for this item to be tabled. I'd like to make that motion, we table this item.
We have a motion on the table, we have a motion that's just been made to table this particular item. Is there a second? A second. We have a motion and a second. It's my option, and I think it's in respect for the entire council that when something is done like this, that I do open it for discussion. So just understanding, we have a motion on the table to table item 5A until some other time, and it has been seconded. Before taking a vote on that, recognize Ms. Jameson.
Yes, I would like Richard Summerlin to explain the loss that you have, how you came to the loss on a 2.5% cap if it passed by the legislature. Because my understanding is that cap means that you can't increase the taxes over 2.5%.
In order to make the calculation, one would have to recalculate the effective tax rate. The effective tax rate is the rate that would be applied to new valuation in whatever tax year you're talking about that would raise the same amount of revenue in the past. And from there, you calculate the rollback rate. This legislation would essentially allow, or not allow, but force a city to go and put this before the voters of the city if they exceeded the rollback election. I made the assumption in my calculation that we would not do that we would roll the tax rate back to 10.3 cents. And so that's how I came up with that number.
Okay, because it didn't make sense, because we know that the appraisal rates are going up. And so with the appraisal rates going up and with a cap, I still don't see how you come up with a loss. I know you don't get as much as you want, but if you increased it 2.5%.
That would be the reduction in the revenue based on us lowering the tax rate 10.3 cents from where it currently is. If you recall, we lowered the tax rate this past year by a penny so that we would be under the rollback rate.
Because that would make us closer to where we were.
Well, no, we did that because if we had left the tax rate and not lowered it a penny, the citizens could have petitioned for an election.
Okay, right. It would have gone to the citizens rather than us.
Well, if they got enough signatures for petition. And the current legislation that's beforehand, that's off the table. It's an automatic that it goes before the electoral.
The cap is automatic.
No, if you go above the rollback rate. It's an automatic that it has to go to the voters.
But that's, the 1.7 is still a guesstimation.
No, ma'am, it's the calculation. If they pass the 2.5% tax rate, that's what the effect would be.
That we would be minus?
It would be that much less revenue than what we currently have.
I guess I'm not following that. How can you have less if you can increase at 2.5 and appraisals are going up?
That's the reduction in tax revenue if there's a 2.5% cap.
I'm not following your math. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that I can explain it any other way.
Well, if your rate's going up and your appraisals are going up, your revenue has to go up, even if it's capped. Now, and really, I feel like if it goes higher than 2.5% increase, citizens should have a right to say something. But I'm not following your math. Everything's increasing and it would cause us to have a loss?
we would have less revenue than we would have. I'm calculating the impact of what our revenue reduction would be.
Okay. Maybe you could do a sheet up for us so that we could see, you know, where you're getting this, because I don't follow it.
Sure, I can provide the calculations.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're talking about revenue you hope for, not existing.
With the, right, I mean, it, well, I'm sorry?
It's revenue that you would like to have.
It would be less revenue. If you compared that to the revenue that we have now, it would be a reduction in our revenues of that amount. That's how I made the calculation. I compared applying the tax rate as it is without rolling it back 10.3 cents to rolling it back 10.3 cents and applying that new rate to a taxable value. Assuming that we have a 3% increase, I based that on a 3% increase for the upcoming tax year.
So you're saying that it would be minus 1.7?
If we increase the tax rate 3%, and we wouldn't be able to because we have a cap of 2.5?
No, I'm saying that if the values increased 3%.
Okay.
I've just made that assumption.
Okay.
If they go up 3%.
Okay.
With a 2.5% tax cap, we would be rolling back the rate 10.3 cents.
Okay. I'd like you to write that on a piece of paper because that doesn't make
Can
sense.
provide you with the calculations.
Thanks.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to try to get some clarity on some of the stuff the questions that I asked back in the briefing session in regards to the delay. Citizens have constantly asked for us to do the homestead exemption. It's something that they have wanted, and as you stated, Mr. Mayor, at our retreat, the entire council agreed that that was something that we should do. We came up with this percentage, and here we are now. And I totally hear and slightly understand the level of concern waiting on the what's going to happen in Austin. My question is, and I asked this in the session, if we delay this vote, will it change the 3% that we've agreed to give the citizens? Anybody that can answer that question?
My understanding, no, it will not. What we have put forth in terms of thinking as a council, the consensus of the council, that we should provide a 3%. But if the state legislature comes back with a 2.5%, our 3% would be overridden. We'd be bound by state law versus city ordinance.
So,
then therefore, that would cause a change in some of the calculations by our finance director.
They're capping it at 2.5% property tax, 2.5% cap will affect our 3% ad valorem tax. Homestead exemption. Is that what you're saying?
It's not exactly what I'm saying, Mr. LeBlanc. Now,
I'm just trying. What I'm trying to do is, I'm just trying to really get a concrete understanding for myself, not just as a councilman, but as a citizen, and to know that if we're delaying this, or we're delaying it with the hopes or possibility, hidden agenda that we're gonna change this 3%?
There is no hidden agenda. The issue is, as I said in the briefing.
We're delaying it, it's a yes or no answer. We're delaying it, change the 3%.
As I said, it will not change the 3%. My concern is that for the future budgetary constrictions that we're gonna have to be put on our city, for 2019 is one thing, for 2020 and the out years, that 2.5% cap is going to have some severe impact on us. So in terms of our looking for our budget and looking at our future, I just think it's best for us at this point to know what the legislature's going to do before we go ahead and put this in concrete in an ordinance. That's simply my point.
Okay, so, and I hear you, but I'm trying to understand if the 3% is not going to change, or we're not going to alter the ordinance as it's written right now, then why the delay?
Well, that's a rhetorical question. So we have a motion on the table to delay this. Seeing no further discussion, okay, Mr. Cooks.
City Manager, we talked about the reduction of revenue, and we brought up that it will impact something part of the budget. Are you able to determine what part of reduction of budget is going to impact by not having this 3% on homestead?
No, sir, not at this point. I can't tell you exactly what it would impact. You recall during the discussion at the workshop that we have, I said it would have, it could limit your abilities, your opportunities. I mean, $200,000 is the difference between a couple of % increase in pay for police and fire. It's equivalent of a couple of pennies on the debt service rate. There's a lot of different things that represents. So without that revenue, those are less options that you have. So at this point, I can't tell you what specifically it will impact.
But you can tell us the amount, and that amount's $294,000.
That is our best estimate, backing out the number on the 3% homestead exemption. That is our best estimate based on the appraised values for 2018, and backing out an assumed number of homes that would probably not qualify for the homestead exemption. That is our estimate right now.
So if we're looking at an estimate, if we're looking at the estimate of 230, we also still can go back and look and say, how will it impact the budget overall? If we're guessing at that number?
Well, it will impact the budget in that it will be a reduction in revenues of $230,000.
Right, but I'm saying what categories? If we're saying we know it's going to, you're saying you don't know what portion of it, you can't estimate where you think that amount will be cut from?
No, I can't, because there's a lot of other things that impact revenues as well. And we have property taxes are the predominant revenue in the general fund. So that will be $200,000, give or take, less. But I can't tell you right now exactly where that's going to come from. That will be, where we can, when we work through the budget, we'll look for areas to cut or to reduce the expenditures to make up that difference. But I can't tell you then what it will be, and I can't tell you what things we would not be able to do. At this point, it's still very preliminary. All I can tell you is that it will be an impact.
Yeah, and that's what I like to see. I like to see what impact it would occur. But I hear you saying we're unable to look at that. But then the second portion of even on the motion, we just talked about that this motion is asking for us to delay it until what point?
Until the state legislature passes the bills and we understand exactly where the state is going.
So what that is saying too, then, if they even delay it further, it could be delayed further.
What we as a council need to understand is that we have an opportunity to go ahead and implement this ordinance until July. And simply doing it now before we know exactly what the state legislature is doing just puts an amount of uncertainty into our budgetary future predictions.
Oh, and I agree with that. But
so we can still do this and still affect the 2019 tax evaluations. But all I'm saying is that we will know exactly what our future looks like once we know what the state legislature is going to do with the revenue cap.
So if that does not happen in July, is my question, then we further
If it doesn't happen in July, then we just move forward exactly as we've done.
we move forward with the homestead
Yes.
exemption. So, but the motion is staying, the motion is on the floor is only when they are, the legislature has said yes, that they're sure with the amount. That's what the motion is.
Well, the motion is very simple in its language, that we delay implementation of this until we know exactly what the state legislature is going to be doing.
Which could be after July. I'm saying it'd be great if the motion stated to July.
If we discuss this hypothetically, this is my personal opinion, if the state legislature closes its session and nothing is done on the property tax cap, and we see that, because we will be able to do this subsequent to the closing of the session and still affect our property valuations. So if they don't do anything by the time the legislative session closes in June, we still have an opportunity to act exactly as we've written it here.
And I feel a little more comfortable if the motion stated that versus how it's stating right now.
We can amend that language, I believe.
My motion was just to table it. And it didn't, and it can come up at another time.
There's this, okay, not putting any language into effect that Mr. McBurnett did not intend. His language is that we just tabled it at this time with no amplification.
But
Bring it up at any other point in time that it's requested by a council member to be put on the agenda, which is by our city charter enabling each council member to do.
And a last comment, go back to the city manager. There's still no way, city manager, that you could still give us a projected, if it is that 230, that you could project some type of where you think it would look. I mean, if we're thinking the 230 is 230, we're estimating. Could we not estimate what the impact of the budget though?
We can give you examples of what $230,000 looks like in terms of street maintenance or personnel or merit increases or pay increases and things like that, but I can't tell you right now because, for example, if revenues come in higher on some other category by $200,000, then we're even again. If it doesn't, then we're not. So I don't know right now.
Right,
we're not in that.
I'm just asking for example.
I can give you some. We can give you some examples of what $230,000 looks like.
Right.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay, that's all I was asking.
But
Okay.
based on what I'm hearing then, and going back to Ms. Jameson's comments have merit, that some additional information would benefit the council to have some more deeper calculations, and so we understand it just a little more in detail.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Cook's questions about where that $230,000 would be impacted, then it's seeming to me that based on the merit of that input, that we do delay this until we can get some further information back in response from staff from these particular questions. So that still leaves the open motion as it stands. Ms. Thomas.
Yes, where it gets cut is a policy decision, and during the budget workshop is where we decide where it gets cut. Now, the staff will bring us suggestions, but it's up to the city council to make that ultimate decision. And I want to be clear that I do support the homestead, but if I have fellow council members that have some strong feelings about delaying a matter that won't affect the end result, then I'm going to support them so that they can have some time to sort out what they need to sort out. But I will be voting for this homestead. And whether we vote for it tonight or we vote for it in May, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be the same homestead exemption as far as I'm concerned.
Mr. Schwartz.
I guess I've got a couple of things. One is I'm in favor of the homestead. That's what we all are. The question is the timing, like we talked about tonight. And I believe we ought to wait and see what the legislature does because it could be critical. There's been articles in the morning news about some of our northern tier cities who have homestead exemptions that are talking about actually having to do away with them if this passes the way it does. So we need to look at that. The other thing I'm going to say is we've got council elections coming up, and there's two of us that aren't rerunning, so there'll be at least two new faces up here, and you know, could be some other turnover. So if we're going to vote on it, we need to do it. So hopefully the legislature will, make their decisions here pretty quick. But I'm in favor of tabling it tonight.
Ms. Jameson?
Well, the other thing that we need to consider is that we have dates that you have to have it done by. It can't just be, so we're going to have to do it within,
Yeah, accepted.
it won't reflect on your bill if it's not done by March. So, I mean, there are dates that the state sets. So it just can't float out there forever. Or it'll go into then 20 and the next one. And that's what's been going on, is we're gonna.
Mr. Summerlin, would you elaborate on those deadlines for us, please?
The two critical deadlines are by March 15th in order for it to reflect on the preliminary assessment of values. But for it to be effective for the 2019 tax year, it would have to be July 1st. I have to have notification to the Dallas Central Appraisal District.
Mr. LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mr. Summerlin. And that's the reason why I am opposed to the delay. It's because of the fact that the citizens have expressed their desire to see this, and they want this. And I hear counsel, and Leslie, I do respect the fact that we want some more information, but our citizens have been asking for this, and the May 11th date is the date that we can show them that we've heard their voice. I'm sorry, thank you, Mayor. March 11th, we can show them that we have heard what they have said, because it will show up on their statement. So that's why I was questioning the delay. Thank you.
There is an interim in between the March and the July. There's an April 26th date to have the exemption reflected on the first preliminary estimated values report, which our citizens could still see.
Actually, the citizens don't receive that notice. That's just a notice that comes to the entities, being the cities and the counties. And we use that in budgetary projections in order to get a little better estimate on what the final approved, what we call certified tax roll, gives us a better estimate. But citizens wouldn't see that. It's
okay.
Largely invisible to most people, other
Thank
than
you.
financial folks like myself.
So I'll reiterate that, Ms. Jameson's concerns and Mr. Cook's concerns have merit, and I believe the council would benefit from having a little more information, and we're not putting ourselves on any kind of a restriction to do this, but it would make us more educated, better informed, and for myself, maybe a little more data would take away some of this risk aversion that I'm having at this particular point in terms of caution, and that's the beast that I am. I'm a numbers guy, and my risk assessment might be a little more conservative than others, and that's just the way each of us is built, and that's the way I am. The numbers guy that I am, that I've been brought up to work with, just says take the numbers very seriously until all the numbers are speaking to you and you understand them. And to Ms. Jameson's point, there's some numbers, quite frankly, that maybe probably a lot of us don't fully understand. So there again, it comes to the point that we have a motion to delay this, that I think until we get some more information from staff, it's incumbent upon us to exercise great wisdom and prudence in delaying this and not taking a vote for implementation tonight. So, Mr. Cooks.
Let's make sure, as we talk about this, we can bring this back up. We're saying at any time or any point including next meeting, if we needed to, we could bring this up without a delay at all. Is that correct, what I'm hearing?
Well, let's put it into total context. We're asking staff to bring back more information for us. And I can't speak for staff, but I would assume that they're going to work on these numbers post-haste. So in that particular respect, we probably could expect by next city council meeting that input.
Mayor, council, just we'll be ready, but whenever you want. But I would like to mention that for our preparation, our council packet preparation, we have a very short turnaround time between tonight and the next council meeting. Staff is required to have their agenda packet ready by Thursday evening for the next council meeting. So for us to work on those numbers and make sure that we're evaluating them and making sure that we're answering your questions, I would request a little bit more time, maybe to the following council meeting, but just a request, so I'll ask.
He's already given the numbers. So all we're asking for is the math that backs it up.
Well, right, but I also think what you're asking is a little bit different question, and I think I would like to relook at that and see if there's a different angle. We'll give you those numbers, but I think a different way to give you what you're asking, because you're asking about that 2.5% additional amount. And I think it would be easier for us to look at that. We'll give you the numbers that he's calculated, but I think if there's another way to look at it to make it, explain it a little better, I would like to have an opportunity to do that.
I would just say math is math. I don't need an angle. I just want math.
I'm trying to answer your question.
The first city council meeting in March will be March 5th. Would that be adequate time between now and March 5th for staff to answer some of these issues?
Again, Mayor, we would have to have our council packet, that memo ready by the end of this week. So we'll work on that if that's what you want to do on the March 5th agenda. That is assuming that you want the numbers in the packet. If you want to wait until the meeting, then that gives us more time, but I think you would want to have that information in the packet.
Likely so. Is there any opportunity for us to give staff some leeway on that agenda deadline? If we could ask for it to be ready for the March 5th agenda. We're still in discussion. My premise still stands. You know, I'm still in that uncertain mode, and I'm not going to change my particular position. Others may. Well, we need to take a vote on the motion that's at hand. Mr. McBurnett, please restate your motion.
I'm making the motion that we table item 5A.
We have a motion and we have a second. Please vote. Motion to table the item is passed. Thank you. Moving on to item 5B. Consider a resolution approving an amendment to the City of Duncanville policy statement and guidelines for economic development grants and tax abatements to include a commercial and residential demo rebuild program. Ms. James.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council. And first of all, I'll apologize for my voice this evening. I'm feeling a little under the weather. So, as the council knows, the city is approximately 94% built out. And so in 2018, staff did a lot of research in terms of ways to try to help redevelop some of the distressed commercial properties, which also led in the consideration of residential properties as well. This was presented to the DCEDC board for consideration to see if they were interested in such a program, and they said that they were. So in order to allocate funding for the program, on May 31st, 2018, the DCEDC board did adopt the FY 18-19 budget to include $100,000 for the commercial portion for the demo rebuild program. The board did know that the actual program would be worked out with our city attorney and brought back to them at a later date for final approval. In addition, that the residential component would also be presented to city council to see if that would be something that they would be interested in adopting as well. So during the 2018 budget planning session, staff provided City Council with an overview of the proposed commercial and residential demo rebuild program. Council did show interest in the program and did direct the city manager to bring back at a future date a proposed program for the commercial and residential portions. In January 2018, the DCEDC board, 2019, I apologize. The DCEDC board did vote unanimously to approve the commercial component of the demo rebuild program and revise the City of Duncanville policy statement and guidelines for economic development grants and tax abatements to include this portion. Oh, I apologize. In terms of the purpose of the policy, the program is designed to increase the sustainability of Duncanville, of the housing stock market, as well as commercial buildings, while promoting economic development. The availability of quality housing stock in the city of Duncanville encourages the relocation of businesses and attracts new businesses, attracts new residents, and also retains existing residents, all of which help stimulate growth, create jobs, and increase property values. In terms of the overview of the program, there's actually a number of components. The first part of it is the demolition incentive. Residential structures with an assessed value of $100,000 or less could receive actual demolition costs up to $15,000. Residential structures with assessed value of more than $100,000 could receive actual demolition costs up to $20,000. The incentive payment process would work as follows: 50% of the demolition of the 50% of the incentive would be paid after the demolition of the existing structure, and then the remaining 50% would be paid after the completion of a new single-family or new commercial property. The second component would be obviously the rebuild component. Applicants could also qualify for 5 additional grants equal to 100% of the difference between the city taxes paid on the new single-family or commercial property improved value and city taxes paid on the original residential structure. This does not include the value of the land or any other property improvements. Home price values will be determined, obviously, by the Dallas Central Appraisal District. Multiple lots will also be considered. The city may consider incentives under this program if the applicant intends to purchase adjacent residential properties, so essentially purchasing 2 properties, demolishing one of the residential structures and replatting, or both of them, and replat the 2 lots into a single lot, and then construct a new single-family home on the single lot. The incentive would include the cost to replat the lots and the demolition cost is specified. It would not include incentives to rebuild, because we do recognize that we would be taking down 2 homes and erecting a higher value of a single home. Multifamily, this was something else for consideration. The city may consider incentives under this program if the applicant intends to demolish an existing apartment complex, townhome, or duplex and site build a high-density residential structure or structures, and this is the key component here, with occupancy similar or less, so that would not be increasing the density of the existing of a new structure on the same lot. In terms of the commercial component, the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation would consider all commercial incentives on a case-by-case basis Each incentive would be a specific project because there are so many different commercial buildings that have unique values and characteristics to them that we would want to ensure that the board evaluated each one accordingly. And then obviously the city council would make any final approval on any of the incentives, the commercial and residential. All applicants, as you know in your backup, all applicants would be required to sign an agreement. 90 days, the applicants for residential properties would have 90 days to demolish once a grant is approved by city council, and then also 6 months to get the new home rebuilt. And this would help ensure that there would not be properties either tore down and left structures down, and also to ensure that those properties are built back in accordance with the agreement. So with that, the city staff is recommending approval of the demo rebuild program, and that would be the amendment to the current policy.
Yeah. Ms. Thomas?
I have a question. So I just want to be clear that the demolitions would be approved by, would be vetted by the EDC, but they would come before the council.
And the commercial properties would be vetted by the EDC, and they would make a recommendation to council. City council would review the residential requests, and they would also make that approval.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Would
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second.
Question. Would you recall I know we had one demolition already that we participated in for another reason, but how much would that demolition cost?
Of the commercial structure?
Yes.
It was under $50,000. I believe it was $30,000. Is that correct?
I can comment on that. So the most recent demolition that we did, sir, was Shamyville.
Right.
The cost of that was $35,000. Of note, though, is in that particular case, there was no asbestos and there was no lead, which may be a concern with some older properties. When we demoed Hanging Gardens property, that demo, I don't remember how large that property was, but I remember the demolition for that was about $45,000, of which, if I'm not mistaken, roughly $10,000 to $15,000 of that was cost related to asbestos abatement.
Thank you. And how do we fund this?
And how are we funding this?
How's this funded?
The commercial portion will be funded by the DCEDC. They have set aside $100,000 for this year. So whether it's one property or multiple properties that would be able to be done within that amount, that's what the board set aside. Now, in terms of the residential portion, that has not been budgeted for this year. So we would ask that you would approve the policy. If an opportunity came forward, we would obviously bring it to you. If not, we would look to budget that in for next year.
So the incentive is more so for the smaller businesses and not necessarily for shopping centers or?
It depends. I mean, it could be for shopping centers. Really what we're trying to do is look at different ways that we can attract redevelopment of distressed properties and trying to make it work financially to be able to put up more sustainable structures where needed.
And I know the policy is definitely needed. Have we already talked with any owners that would benefit from such a policy?
This is something that I have
No,
spoke
business.
with.
I'm talking about commercial. I'm talking about commercial property. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, I've actually spoke with different developers, and they've showed interest in this property. There's a property already, I can't really name the address, but there's a property in Duncanville that they feel like that this might be an opportunity for them to purchase it and redevelop it.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Jamison?
I was just going to say to Councilman Cooks, this is, since it's not been funded for next year and it'll come out of general fund, here's some money. This is what we're talking about. So we're talking about spending already, and we haven't allocated the money for the homestead exemption.
But DCEDC incomes are derived from our sales taxes.
That is correct for
Right,
commercial
that's
property.
commercial.
Yes,
Residential cannot come from EDZC.
Oh, correct.
That is correct.
So-
Yes,
ma'am. Could you go back to the slide where the criteria are listed for the dollar amounts? Right there.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is a very, very minor point, but you verbalized could receive versus the language here in black and white is will receive? There's a great deal of difference, which takes, you inputted discretion with a could, a will imposes something different. So what is the correct language in the resolution itself? Does it say could or does it say will?
It does say will. Obviously, this is at the discretion of city council. So as we sign an agreement, the city council does have the right to either include that or not. They could include a portion of it. They could just do the demo part, or they could do the rebuild portion. So that is at the discretion of city council in terms of how that agreement would be approved.
Would it not be better to change the will to a could to give the council a little more latitude in that?
We
May.
definitely could make that change.
May is even a happier word.
Yes, sir.
Is that, I can't speak for the entire council, but, would that be all right with y'all if those wills were changed to mays, which gives us a little more discretion and flexibility?
We definitely can.
I'm getting a verbal assent, so
okay.
if y'all could do that, I'd appreciate it. Or we would appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. We have a motion to approve, and any further inputs, questions? Please vote. Okay, thank you very much. Item 5C, consider adopting a resolution in support of Our Home, Our Decisions campaign and the Texas Municipal League Legislative Program for 2019-2020.
Mayor, members of council, as you may recall at your council retreat that was held in October of 2018 at Lakeview Camp, we briefed you on the TML legislative agenda that was being promulgated to move forward, that was adopted by the Summit Committee and then ultimately by the TML board. You were briefed on all the different policy objectives, bills, and the philosophy, in essence, of the TML. And I'll go through the three of those bullet points. The first philosophy of the league that will vigorously oppose any legislation that would erode the authority of Texas cities to govern their own affairs. Second, cities that represent the level of government closest to the people. They bear the primary responsibility for the provision of capital infrastructure and for ensuring our citizens' health and safety. Thus, cities must be assured of a predictable and sufficient level of revenue and must resist efforts to diminish their revenue. And third, the league will oppose the imposition of any state mandates that do not provide a commensurate level of compensation. Those are the three philosophical tenets for the Texas Municipal League, and that's where they come up with the bills that are in your packet and attached. So the other second part of this, as we briefed, was the campaign, as you may recall at the TML conference, the rollout of the Our Home and Our Decisions campaign from TML. And I'll just briefly go through some of those bullet points. And first, Texans want the decisions that affect their homes and neighborhoods that reflect the local priorities and values. Second, the ability of Texans to create a vibrant, livable city is under assault from state officials who want to dictate that every community and neighborhood conform to their agenda. Third, state officials want to put the one-size-fits-all restrictions on the annual budgets of all cities and counties. For some state officials are trying to mislead Texans to believe that cities are to blame for high property taxes. Instead of blaming cities, the state can provide meaningful property tax relief by fixing the school finance system. And as you know, that is the largest percentage of your property tax burden. So in conclusion, the local decision-making allows the community to determine service levels and how much they want to invest in infrastructure improvements like roads, new police and fire stations, water sewage treatment plants, and recreational facilities. Also, local decision-making also allows for a community to implement their own specific rules and regulations that protect their home values and the character of neighborhoods and affect the homes and neighborhoods that reflect our local priorities here. And then letting Texans decide at the local level what is best for the community, which is the foundation that is called the Texas Miracle because of the number of people that are moving into Texas and the high number of jobs and businesses that are coming here. With that, I'll take any questions.
Seeing no questions, the chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. Please vote. Thank you. Motion is passed. Item 5D is take any necessary action as a result of executive session. Citizens, we did not complete our executive session, so we are going to have to go back into that in just a bit. We are going to take the staff and board reports at this point in time, and then after the staff and board reports, the city council will go back into executive session. So item 6A, the 2018 annual report for the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Council again. Every year, the EDC does provide, that's part of our bylaws, that we do provide an annual report to City Council. Basically, it lists the activities that the board has taken throughout the year. In terms of community dollars invested as a result of DCEDC participation, these are dollars from businesses that have invested into the community, and the EDC has provided some type of incentive or assistance with that. You can see it's $10,325,000. The economic development project dollars that have been invested into the community, that's $986,802.13. The primary component for that is the $900,000 that the EDC used to purchase the former Toyota property, or 730 East I-20. The community project development dollars, these are dollars that are invested for community projects. For this year, it includes park bonds, the field house debt service payment that we pay, the EDC pays, Keep Duncanville Beautiful, and then also the beautification efforts that take place around the community that the EDC funds as well. Jobs created or retained by projects that DCEDC was associated with, and this is 170 jobs. This includes W&B, as they were provided an incentive. They have 100 jobs that we've been able to retain, and they continue to look for ways to actually expand on their current site. Tenhagen Excavating, which received their award earlier, and they were able to expand their corporate headquarters, and that accounted for 30 employees. And then the hotel that we have, the Hampton Inn and Suites, that is coming up, that will be for 31 jobs. And then Ideal Floors, with their grant that we participated in, that was 9 jobs. We also every year provide an update on the library and recreational center usage, and that was simply because that's what was approved through the 1995 proposition that established the Type B funding. And you can see there what their numbers have been from 2017 to 2018. For the most part, those numbers have increased. The only place that they've decreased is the number of visits. But as you know from Julio's presentations that he gives on a quarterly basis, they've done a lot of outreach to try to actually go out into the community and reach those residents. So they're actually, those that aren't able to are not, do not actually have to walk in the front door of the library. So just we also give an update of the existing Type B projects. For the field house, DCEDC paid $536,550 for the debt service payment for the facility. W&B Service Company, the final payment for 2018 is being processed, and that was based on a property tax reimbursement as well as sales tax, a sales tax basically abatement. The incentive is complete. SWH, or the Hampton Inn and Suites, what I spoke about earlier, the incentive is still active. We look to be paying that out this year. They are trying to get proposed to get open in May, as I'd stated earlier. Tenhagen Excavating, the board approved $48,000 grant to assist with the cost of a masonry screening wall, as you all know, for their new corporate headquarters listed over on Alexander. The DCEDC also purchased the property, as I said before, the former Toyota property for $900,000. In terms of the DCEDC activity highlights, on January 11th, 2018, the board voted to move the board meeting to the second Monday of each month at 6 p.m. to try to accommodate everyone's schedules. In February, the board approved the 2017 annual report, which what I'm giving this evening is the 2018. The board also held a public hearing and approved the DCDC Community Enhancement Program. As you know from our joint meeting, that's the building blocks for our strategic plan. Prior to the meeting, the board did make a check presentation to Ten Hagen Excavating, Inc. for their completion of their grant for $48,000. On March 19th, the DCDC board approved a screening wall to Weitzman Group for $2,200. And then in April, Timothy Hamilton, the park superintendent, provided the board and staff with an update and presentation on the Parks Department's beautification efforts, which again, as I stated earlier, are funded by the EDC. A portion of those are funded, I better clarify that, by the EDC. On May 7th, the board held a special called meeting and public hearing to vote on the purchase of the property located at 730 I-20, as we've already discussed. And then in May 31st, the board presented outgoing president Barry Gordon with an award for his dedication and service to the board. At that time, the board also nominated or elected Steve Dial as president and Derwin Broughton as the vice president. The board also approved at that meeting the FY 18-19 budget, as I stated in my previous presentation. In August, the board approved a grant for Cox Farms Nursery in the amount of $22,975 to fund the dry stack fire hydrants for the property located at 114 Azalea. And as you remember, this was required in order for that property to perform at its highest and best use and for him to be able to utilize that and grow his business. September 24th, the board amended the FY 18-19 budget to include the incentive that was awarded to Cox Farms. And then in December, the board did re-elect. We did get the 3 new board members as appointed by council, and so the board at that time chose to re-elect Steve Dial as president and Derwin Broughton as vice president. The board also approved a $5,000 sign grant to Ideal Floors and amended the budget to reflect it accordingly. Throughout the year, the board continued and staff continued to participate in numerous activities. This include everything. Obviously, we have our ribbon cuttings. We have the flavor of Duncanville up there. We have the check presentations that we do to highlight the businesses that we're able to support. They also participated in the State of the City and as well as the Regional Economic Development Summit and numerous Best Southwest Partnership luncheons. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, Chair will entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve, and I say go home and get some hot tea with honey and lemon and go to bed.
We have a motion to approve in a second. Please vote. Thank you. Next on the agenda, 6B, receive the Police Department 2018 Racial Profiling Report. Chief Lavigne.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for the opportunity to present our 2018 Racial Profiling Report as required by law. Again, requirements mandated by law are that we must report to our governing body, the City Council in our case, by March 1st of the preceding year, motor vehicle stops which resulted in citations, a warning, an arrest, or a search. It also requires that a comparative analysis be done to evaluate the number of motor vehicle stops of persons recognized as ethnic minorities versus those who are not, to examine the disposition of stops made in the same demographic context, and to evaluate and compare searches resulting from motor vehicle stops and whether contraband was found during searches, and information relating to each complaint alleging racial profiling against an officer. The Duncanville Police Department contracted with Dr. Eric Fritsch. He's a department head of the University of North Texas Criminal Justice Program for reporting and independent analysis of the pertinent data required by law. Dr. Fritsch has conducted this reporting and analysis for our department each year over the last decade. He is the research methods advisor to those attending the School of Executive Leadership at the Institute for Law Enforcement Administration located in Plano. Prior to his academic career, he was a Texas peace officer. Results of the analysis concluded that the executive summary, as you will find in your report on pages 1 through 2, explicitly state that the Duncanville Police Department is in full compliance with the applicable Texas statutes pertaining to racial profiling. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you very much for that report. Seeing as how there's no questions, didn't have to approve the last report. It's not necessary to approve this report, so we will receive it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last item on the agenda is item 6C, receive the comprehensive plan annual report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chastity Allen Benson, City Planner. I'm just coming before you tonight to give you some implementation highlights and update on the progress of the work that's been done since adoption of the comprehensive plan in 2017. As you all recall, there were several emerging themes and guiding principles that were developed as a result of all of the public input that we received throughout the process. And those guiding principles and emerging themes really set the foundation for the plan. And so the recommendations and the implementation plan was created with these in mind. Currently, progress for the comprehensive plan is tracked. If you all noticed during the staff reports that you all generally receive, a lot of times there's a comprehensive plan section in terms of how that particular item that comes before you relates to the comprehensive plan, whether it be a zoning case or some other item that may have a specific recommendation in the comprehensive plan. Staff tries to make note of those so that you can see how the plan is being used in our current programs and initiatives. Additionally, the comprehensive plan is used for work plan updates. So as the work plan is developed, we're making sure that we are aligning with the recommendations of the plan. And then, of course, our quarterly reports, let's cut off there, our quarterly reports that are presented by the different departments should also highlight any tie-in with any of the comprehensive plan. And then, of course, just coming forward with highlights of how we have been working towards implementation over the year. Again, the comprehensive plan is a living working document, and ultimately the plan does call for review and update after a 5-year period, just to align with kind of changes in the community as well as changes in the priority from the policymakers. Currently, staff is asked to update the status of projects and programs and initiatives that are explicitly tied to recommendations in the comprehensive plan. So we try to track how we're doing in terms of implementation, either if the initiative has not started yet, just started, if it's in progress, almost done, or if the task is complete. And then, of course, highlighting the summation of the goals over the year. This is just an example of the implementation plan that was in the comprehensive plan, and staff went through and numbered each of those recommendations. We refer to them as goals because the recommendations themselves have turned into action items. And so we have approximately 44 total in the comprehensive plan, but be mindful again that it's a long-term plan. And so there was no expectation that we would complete all of the recommendations in a short period of time because it is a long-range plan. But we have started or in progress or almost done or completed approximately 41% of the recommendations, which is a great start for a city who's adopted its first comprehensive plan. So it just shows that we are trying to use the plan as we move forward with different programs and initiatives. Some of the policy and implementation highlights, some of the goals that were specifically recommended in the comprehensive plan as it related to branding initiatives, our zoning ordinance update, which we've kicked off. I thank you all for attending the kickoff meeting, the community meeting on February the 12th for the zoning ordinance update, making sure that we update our zoning ordinance to not only align with the comprehensive plan, but then also address our infill and redevelopment needs of the city. There was a specific goal as it relates to making sure that we are addressing connectivity and walkability in the community, and that can be seen with the implementation of our sidewalk construction that is underway. And then there was a specific goal as it related to our gateways along our major freeways, and we have moved forward with the 67 landscape design and gateway design as it relates to that. So again, as you can see, some of those goals and recommendations actually tie directly into some capital projects. There were some other policy highlights as far as park and rec improvements. There were specific recommendations as it related to implementation and funding parks projects and aligning those with the recommendations of the Parks Master Plan. And of course, the bond approval will help to fund some of those projects, which does align not only with the comp plan, but also the recommendations of the Park Master Plan. There was also a goal, a specific goal related to public art. The goal itself, or the recommendation itself, included the possibility of looking at development of an arts commission, which is still considered. However, the ultimate goal was to try to implement public art throughout the city, and that started with an initiative related to the art contest and the wrapping of the traffic boxes. So that's kind of like a first step type of project. And those are just some pictures of some initiatives that are underway and were recommendations of the plan. And I did just want to end on recognizing that because we did adopt the comprehensive plan, it did make us eligible for certain awards and recognition, because a lot of the awards and recognition that are available require you to have policies that are adopted as it relates to beautification or walkability, connectivity, transportation, redevelopment. And so because we did adopt the plan, we did receive bronze recognition as a scenic city for the first time. We're very proud of that. And we were also recognized by the North Central Texas Council of Governments, the MTP Policy Bundle, which essentially allows us to be eligible for transportation development credits to help fund transportation projects. Whenever there is a city match for a federal project, we can apply for those credits, and that is a result of having adopted policies as a part of the plan. And then finally, we were recognized by the American Planning Association Texas chapter for planning excellence. And again, just because we had approved the comprehensive plan, it just ensures that we are setting the stage for how we're going to move forward in the future of the city. And that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Seeing as there are none, thank you very much. At this point, we're going to recess City Council, and the council will move into the briefing room chambers. We will go through the executive session items there, and once we finish the executive session items, we will come back into council session, but we'll do it from that room, and you'll know when that happens. We'll open the door instead of us all moving back in here. So looking at the number of people that are present here tonight, there'll still be plenty of room in the briefing room if you want to stay in here, what's going to happen after the executive session. So we stand recessed from City Council at 9:08.
City Council at 9:36.
And I am reporting that on executive session items 1 and 2, there is no action necessary. And with that, we adjourn City Council at 9:37.